What happens when a president decides to use a government shutdown as a weapon? This week, Washington was rocked by a stunning move. Billions of federal dollars, money already set aside for projects, jobs, and families, suddenly frozen. And not just anywhere. The White House specifically targeted Democratic strongholds like New York, California, and Illinois. Supporters call it a bold stand against runaway spending. Critics say it's something far darker, political blackmail, with ordinary Americans caught in the crossfire. And the timing couldn't be more explosive. Hundreds of thousands of workers are already furloughed, agencies are shuttered, and the nation is bracing for impact. But behind the chaos lies a bigger question. Is this about saving money or crushing political opponents? Late Wednesday night, as the shutdown drama deepened, Trump jumped onto his favorite platform, Truth Social. In a short but explosive post, he declared billions of dollars can be saved. No long explanation, no policy details, just a blunt message aimed at his base. To his supporters, it sounded like proof that he's standing up against bloated government spending. To his critics, it was a chilling confirmation. The cuts weren't about efficiency at all. They were about punishment. Because let's be clear, the money he froze wasn't random. It was $18 billion for New York transit projects, the home turf of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the two most powerful Democrats in Congress. And another $8 billion yanked from clean energy programs in 16 Democratic-run states. Every dollar pulled had a political target painted on it. The message behind the post was impossible to miss. Trump wasn't just saving cash. He was flexing power, showing that with a single move, he could cripple projects, derail jobs, and squeeze his rivals where it hurt most. And here's where it gets even sharper. That post went viral in Trump circles, with supporters cheering him on for finally taking a hard line. But for Democrats, it read like a ransom note, proof that the White House was holding billions hostage until they bent the knee. But the online post was just the start. What came next would hit real families across the country. As the shutdown gripped Washington, Trump did what he always does in moments of crisis. He went online. Just before midnight, a blunt message appeared on his Truth Social account. Billions of dollars can be saved. No charts, no breakdowns, just that single line. And instantly, it set the tone for what came next. To his supporters, this wasn't just a post, it was a rallying cry. They saw a president cutting waste, standing firm against what he calls bloated government spending. But to his opponents, it looked like something very different, a warning shot signaling that federal dollars could be used as a political weapon. And look at where those cuts landed. $18 billion pulled from New York's subway and harbor projects, the very state where Schumer and Jeffries hold power. Another $8 billion stripped from clean energy programs across Democratic-led states like California and Illinois. None of that was random. Every target was deliberate. The late-night post carried more weight than a typical Trump message. It wasn't just venting. It was proof he was prepared to follow through, turning a budget crisis into a battlefield. And as the post spread, reactions split sharply. Conservative influencers reposted it with fire emojis, calling it bold leadership. Meanwhile, Democrats described it as blackmail in broad daylight. To them, this wasn't about saving money. It was about squeezing their states until they broke. But the ripple effects weren't limited to politics. The very next morning, ordinary workers began to feel the freeze. While politicians traded insults in Washington, the shutdown's impact hit ordinary Americans almost immediately. More than 750,000 federal workers were told not to show up to the jobs that pay their bills. Families who depend on those paychecks were suddenly left in limbo, wondering how long they could stretch savings while the political fight dragged on. And for those still required to work, like troops, border patrol agents, and air traffic controllers, the situation was even harsher. They had to keep showing up, keep protecting the country, but with no paychecks coming in. The fallout didn't stop there. The Department of Veterans Affairs said it would still bury service members at national cemeteries, but headstones wouldn't be placed and even the grass wouldn't be cut. A symbolic reminder of how shutdowns hit the most personal corners of American life. Meanwhile, across the country, scientific research projects were frozen, environmental cleanup sites were abandoned, and federal financial oversight came to a halt. Every day the government stayed shut, the ripple effects grew wider, reaching into classrooms, communities, and industries that had nothing to do with partisan fights. What made this shutdown different was the sense of permanency. Past shutdowns were painful but temporary. This time, Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance made it clear if the shutdown drags on, layoffs are coming. And not just a handful. Vance warned that up to 300,000 workers could be lost forever by December. That threat sent a wave of panic through federal offices, because suddenly this wasn't just a standoff over a budget. It was a question of survival for hundreds of thousands of families. But Trump's team wasn't backing down. In fact, the White House doubled down on its warnings the very next day. At the White House podium, Vice President Vance delivered a message that shocked even some Republicans. He warned that if the shutdown dragged on, it wouldn't just mean delays or unpaid leave. It would mean permanent layoffs. His words were blunt. If Congress couldn't reach a deal in a matter of days, the administration would be forced to start slashing federal jobs outright. And he wasn't talking small numbers. Up to 300,000 workers could be cut by December. That's families losing their income, entire communities hit, and agencies stripped of staff they may never get back. For decades, shutdowns have been disruptive but temporary. Workers might lose paychecks for weeks, but when the government reopened, they returned to their desks. What Vance suggested broke that pattern entirely, turning a political standoff into a career-ending purge. Behind the scenes, insiders say this threat wasn't just about saving money. It was about reshaping Washington. Trump and Vance have both talked about wanting to drain the swamp by replacing career officials with loyalists. Now, critics argue the shutdown could become the tool to make that vision real. Federal employees, already rattled by furloughs, now faced a terrifying possibility that their jobs might never come back. Anxiety spread through agencies, from the Patent Office to Homeland Security. Even a quiet internal memo revealed that layoffs were already being planned. Supporters praised Vance's hardline, calling it the tough medicine needed to break bureaucratic resistance. But to many, it felt like the administration was weaponizing the shutdown to tighten its grip on power. And Democrats wasted no time firing back.
The reaction from Democrats was immediate and furious. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, standing on the steps of the Capitol, accused Trump of turning everyday Americans into bargaining chips. His words were sharp. He is using the American people as pawns, threatening pain on the country as blackmail. In New York, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries warned that halting billions in transit and harbor projects would do more than stall construction. It would throw thousands of workers out of their jobs almost overnight, crippling the very communities still recovering from inflation and economic strain. Both leaders painted the freeze as a deliberate act of sabotage, aimed squarely at blue states. To them, this wasn't about fiscal discipline. It was about punishing political enemies and sending a message before the 2026 midterms. And their anger resonated. Local officials in New York called emergency press conferences, warning that subway expansions, safety upgrades, and harbor improvements could all collapse. In California, environmental leaders said freezing clean energy funds would stall critical projects just as wildfire season intensifies. Schumer's fiery speech lit up social media, spreading clips across TikTok and Twitter. Supporters of the Democrats echoed his line. This wasn't budgeting, it was blackmail in plain sight. But even as Democrats blasted the move as reckless and cruel, Republicans inside Trump's own party were quietly growing uneasy. Even inside Trump's own party, the shutdown freeze sparked unease. Republican Senator Tom Tillis, usually a reliable conservative voice, openly warned that targeting infrastructure money for New York could backfire. His concern wasn't about helping Democrats, it was about poisoning negotiations. They need to be really careful with that, Tillis cautioned, because they can create a toxic environment here. That phrase, toxic environment, rippled through Washington. It was a rare moment where a Republican admitted what many behind closed doors were already saying. Trump's strategy might make it harder to end the shutdown at all. But not everyone on the right saw it that way. Senate GOP leader John Thune brushed aside the concerns at a press conference. His message was simple. If Democrats don't like it, just vote to reopen the government. To Thune, the freeze wasn't blackmail, it was leverage. This split inside the GOP revealed two very different camps. One side worried about the long-term damage, about workers, and about the growing frustration back home. The other side embraced Trump's hardball tactics, convinced the pain was worth the political payoff. That internal divide is where the drama deepened, because if Republicans couldn't hold the line together, the showdown could spin out of Trump's control. And as the Senate headed back into another round of failed votes, that risk started to look very real. As the shutdown stretched into another day, all eyes turned to the Senate. Could either side find a way out of the deadlock? The answer, at least for now, was no. Two competing bills hit the floor. First, a Republican proposal to fund the government only through late November, a short-term patch that left Trump's freeze firmly in place. Democrats blocked that. Then came the Democratic plan, pairing government funding with new health care protections. Republicans struck that one down too. Different day, different vote, same result: stalemate. The chamber was tense. Senators huddled in small groups on the floor, searching for any path forward. But with Republicans holding a 53-47 majority, they still needed at least 7 Democrats to cross the aisle. And Democrats weren't budging, not while billions in their states were being held hostage. Frustration spilled out in the open. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, who represents thousands of federal workers near Washington, said he wanted compromise, but wasn't about to let Trump dictate the rules. Across the aisle, Republicans accused Democrats of surrendering to partisan pressure, even recycling a false claim that the Democratic plan would cover people in the country illegally. Meanwhile, the real issue, a massive $1.7 trillion budget for agency operations, remained untouched. Every failed vote left agencies deeper in limbo and workers more anxious. And the longer the stalemate dragged on, the clearer it became. This shutdown wasn't just another political fight. It was turning into a struggle over who truly controls the federal government itself. But the biggest stakes were yet to come. By now, it was obvious. This shutdown wasn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It was about power and how far Trump was willing to go to reshape Washington. At the heart of the standoff was nearly $1.7 trillion in agency funding, a quarter of all government spending. That's money for everything from national parks and housing programs to law enforcement and education. And layered on top of that, a national debt that has ballooned past $37 trillion. But for Democrats, the biggest fear wasn't the debt. It was Trump himself. Even if Congress managed to pass a budget, they worried he would simply ignore it, something he's been accused of doing before. That possibility raised a chilling question. What happens when a president decides he's no longer bound by the very laws he signs? Republicans, meanwhile, saw an opening. They framed the fight as a test of discipline, a chance to rein in spending, cut what they call waste, and prove to voters that they could stand firm heading into the 2026 midterms. In reality, both sides were digging trenches, preparing for a prolonged war. And every day the government stayed shut, the consequences spread, from Wall Street to classrooms to the smallest towns depending on federal aid. This wasn't just a shutdown anymore. It had become a trial of strength, a question of whether Trump could bend the machinery of government to his will, or whether Congress could stop him before the damage became permanent. And as both parties traded blame on national television, ordinary Americans were left waiting, watching, and wondering whose side of the fight would hit them hardest. And so, what started as a budget fight has morphed into something far bigger, a test of Trump's influence, the unity of Congress, and the limits of government itself. Shutdowns always carry a cost, but this one feels different. It's not just dollars and cents or programs delayed. It's a glimpse into a political storm that could shape the next election and maybe even redefine the balance of power in Washington. Trump's critics warn this is the clearest sign yet of what his return means: confrontation, division, and a government held hostage to his agenda. His allies, on the other hand, call it strength, proof that he's willing to fight battles others avoided. Whichever side you're on, One thing is undeniable. This shutdown isn't just about today. It's about the road ahead and the question hanging over America. How far will Trump go, and who, if anyone, is truly capable of stopping him?